that led us to create this theme of regenerate, and also so farmers and community organizers, activists, and just students can learn what regenerative agriculture is all about, and how we're basically taking it back to our roots. And that actually leads me to our TU Tuesday. So if you were on the line yesterday, you know we discussed Sankofa, right? And the notion of looking back in order to move forward. So our presentation today does just that, right? So we're gonna highlight some of the past agricultural techniques through our Dean Hill, who Dean Hill, who will discuss George Washington Carver's practices and techniques used in his agriculture research and how that relates to regenerative agriculture. And Dean Hill, of course, needs no introduction, but I will do so. Dean Walter Hill serves as the Dean of College of Agriculture, Environmental, and Nutritious Sciences, and also the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, Land Grant, Community Engagement, and Integrative Sustainability Affairs. Dr. Hill has been a faculty member at Tuskegee University since 1977 and the Dean of Agriculture since 1987. He currently serves as professor, dean, vice provost, and director of USDA 1890 Research, administrator of USDA 1890 Cooperative Extension, and the director of the Carver Agricultural Experiment Station at Tuskegee University, all while being a member of the Macon County Economic Development Authority. So hats off to you, Dr. Hill, for wearing actually so many hats in our community. We definitely appreciate your role. But as I said, we are going to have another presentation where we are taking it back in order to move forward. And we will see that with Dr. Jazz's presentation. Dr. Jazz is our very own Tuskegee alumni, congrats. And she's also the co-founder of the Garden of Tuskegee, a role model teaching farm focused on regenerative agriculture. And just information about Dr. Jazz, who also needs no introduction. She's the co-founder, as I said, of the Garden of Tuskegee, or TGT, and she's also the Self-Determining Food Economies and Policy Manager for the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. She partners with academic research teams, anchor institutions, philanthropic foundations, and community-based organizations to identify root causes of and develop innovative solutions to food system challenges. Dr. Jazz received her master's degree in community planning from Auburn University and her PhD in integrative public policy and development from Tuskegee University. Shout out to our program. As a New Orleans native, she has developed a unique perspective when it comes to food and the effects that it has on communities. Dr. Jazz believes that your zip code should not determine your life expectancy, yes. And building relationships are essential to creating a sustainable and just food system. So as you all can see, I'm very, 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 very excited for the presentations today. And without further ado, I will let Dr. Hill have the floor.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I said, I want to go through my slides real fast so I can get to my last one. Y'all blew me away yesterday. I hope, yeah, I'm going to make a couple of points based on the elder. I'm the elder here today. I'm going to make a couple of points that I hope you all will take to heart. First of all, I hope you captured yesterday. I hope you valued yesterday. Yesterday should be shared widely as you all work the words in your hearts and came up with ways from a very youthful but very science-based and thoughtful way to think about regenerative agriculture. I'm going to give you an example of why you can't let that intellectuality slide. You've got to do something with it. I'm going to show you. And Carver was one good example of giving our gifts away. So you're gifted, but what are you going to do with it? How are you going to capture it now? So let me start. Okay, let me put this up. See, I think I can do it real quick. host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you let me share my screen? Degenerative, and you did all kind of wonderful things. And I sat back and thought about Carver and looked up the word generative, innovative, creative, originator. And so when we think about regenerative, we're talking about everything you talked about yesterday, but I was trying to find a way to tie it to culture, as you all did, tying it to your history, your African history, your African-American history, and our creativity. And so this was one way of trying to connect to you in terms of what I'm going to try to present today. I'm not going to even spend time on this one because you all did this yesterday. And everybody would have a different way of actually defining regenerative and throw your slants and your angles on it. But I did want to, for myself, put some terms down that kind of link to Carver. And there's a lot in this that links to what he did. And as Raymond pointed out, as he was thinking back on his own career yesterday, that one element that binds everything together is soil. But then you go from there, and others were talking about, see, one of the definitions that brings in people and farmers and animals, et cetera, et cetera. When you talk about regenerative, you can look at it from micro systems, mid systems, macro systems, ecosystem, global system, world. And we're going to talk about that at the end. I'm going to give you all some challenges, some global challenges on how to deal with this very, very holistic approach to looking at the world. And I just like diagram because that light blue shows you that we are killing ourselves with all this CO2 and then methane, and you all know all that really good. And I wanted, yeah, as you did yesterday, we don't have to do this. As the next slide from Rodale showed, and you know, we play with this, but oftentimes people say you won't make the money or it take too long for the transition, but we can speed up whatever we want to speed up. That's just a decision if we want to farm and live a different way. And again, I won't spend time on this, but I just wanted to connect with you from your eloquent presentation from yesterday. Also knowing that most Americans, and if we had a good way of measuring worldwide, probably 90% of the world's population would want to do things the right way. So I needed something simple. You all are very smart, little geniuses walking around. I have 3 little genius sons and now some genius granddaughters and grandsons. So I know what genius looks like. I am not it, but I can definitely recognize it. So I need a simple way. And so what I did was just say, let me just draw a little line. I can show my little brand new grandson, named for me. Well, he's young, but just draw a line. Well, my granddaughter, she would get a line representing Earth, and above the line, the toxicity, and below the line is life. And so it's real simple. We just need to farm a different way to generate life. And we're doing it in a way that's killing us, really. And we don't have to, and you're going to have to change that. So I want to link that. That's what you all already know. And so what I want to do is try to do some little nuanced connections with George Washington Carver. So I want to start with what we already know. He was just a holistic person. You can think about his brain. Sometimes I sit back and say, how did his mind work? You go to the mycorrhiza, he was doing all these samples of fungi, go out in the woods and do it. Then he think real big about an economic development of a product of the whole South, about legumes. I mean, and then how to help India. I mean, the person just very broad in his thinking. And so that led me to, had to give a talk the other day. And Du Bois came to my mind because Du Bois, in his concept of double consciousness, and I always thought of it as having to look at the world from two sets of eyes. You're looking at it from who you are and what's going on in front of you. Then you have to go around the other side and see how that's looking. And you have to do that to survive. And we definitely need to tell our young people that, since people are shooting them every day, whatever situation you're in, try to get that double consciousness working for you so you can see from your eyes and the other side. And even doing this from scholarship. It's a personal relationship in dealing with individuals. So scholarship piece and seeing it from different angles. And you can use that tool. Go back and study Du Bois on that a little bit. I think it's going to help you. So I was trying to figure Carver out from his two sets of eyes when he was at Iowa State. And I read about him and all the stuff he went through. And, you know, I see now, said, why did Carver leave there when he was at the best, you know, he was at his peak. Some of you may one day want to be at Harvard or Cornell or somewhere, University of California, Chicago, president or head of this or that, or some institution. You know, you might just aspire in London, England, or China. You may want to head the country, you know, who know, you are, you know, it's unlimited what you might want to be. But Carver, who was at a pinnacle, and when I go to Iowa, I always put this slide up. Just remember, he was there only 5 years, and he was at Tuskegee for a lifetime. And so I said, why did he leave there? Because this is going to influence how he looked at the earth. So as a slave, then at 15 years old, he saw lynching. About the time he was deciding to come, the Second Moral Act was passed. And I could just see him, like hearing the news, they're going to have land grant colleges at Black schools. They will have land and they will be able to develop agriculture. And so did that excite him? I mean, you read him and he was looking at Tuskegee for a long number of years. And so I think he was there at Iowa and that lynching came to his mind. And who could he, you know, you remember when he was there, he had to hold his head down walking by white women. You know what I'm saying? The word self-effacing, the opposite of you all, because you all are so bold. This is my, you know, you all are like warriors. And then Carver had to, you know, to survive. And then why would he want to stay in an environment like that if he had a choice? And so I said, I understand. Then because of the way he saw the world, he wasn't just looking in the mirror at himself. Okay. And I do think about that second bullet there. I mean, you have to talk to people sometimes, don't you? It's something on your mind. Who can you go talk to? Who you trust? You talk about the things that's hurting you inside and that you wake up in a nightmare in. And who could he have talked to about the fact that his mother was stolen by slave traders? Nobody at Iowa. So some of the things, the creative side of life, we're all looking for love and unlimited openness for our creativity and where your leadership could be fully manifested. Now that's you all are gonna make your own path to get there. And so you can't run into a Iowa that's gonna have you keep her the greenhouse for 30 years. And of course, Carver could see that, and that's why he decided to go. But when you read him, there are at least 4 quotes, there are many more that really touched my heart in my early years here at Tuskegee, and coming to Tuskegee and deciding to stay here, was he actually went to his people. Look, the first talk I gave at Tuskegee was to the ag faculty, and the title was Carver the Revolutionary. And people were ready to get rid of me from Tuskegee from that first day, because I went into his study and found everything he did radical, different, against the system, whatever. And there was a lot, but he was also very careful because he had good reason to stay here. He had made up his mind to come, but he concentrated on, I'm going to do something for my people. So that's why he suffered here. He suffered amongst his people also. And the other thing about his coming was the Reconstruction had ended. It's the worst time to come. Heck, the few years of Reconstruction were gone. The slave masters were taking over, the lynchings, taking back the land, all that negative stuff that happened to Black people that had people run to the North. And that's what was happening when Carver faced. So these are the things you already know about Carver that he did. I don't want to repeat these, but sometimes people do forget that he taught. And that's something you might think about in terms of generative and regenerative. Yes, to the earth, but what about to the young and to the people? What can you do to keep them alive and moving forward? And also, he decided to work at a HBCU, and he lived in a Black community. So his presence, people don't think about that. Carver was at Tuskegee, but Carver consciously stayed in this place and then sometimes suffered indignities among his own people, but he had a purpose for that. As far as the regenerative component, clearly his work with composting and crop rotations, the crop rotation piece was big, and bringing the legumes in, where he impacted the whole South, the whole cotton component. But he did that with small farmers. He did a lot of teaching about regenerative agriculture through his work with the Jessup wagon and going out and working with small farmers and beautifying their homes. So again, his holistic approach. And I want to close this session down by just reiterating the two sets of eyes, because he worked with his people and small and poor, Jessup wagon out, storing sweet potatoes, just practical stuff, flowers around the house for beautification and paint, homemade paint for beauty, and those kind of things, which he was given to his people in their life. And at the same time, he was working on peanut rotation that the big planters took a hold of, and Congress took a hold of, and part of his folklore came out of the fact that white people accepted him because he made a contribution to large white farmer growers. And that's something you have to recognize when you see people getting fame. One question you might want to ask is, who is giving them the fame? Who is giving them the fame? And we as a people, sometimes if you make it in the white world, then the Black community will recognize you. Where there could be a lot of things you're doing right now that are really helping your community, and people may not be giving you credit, but don't worry about that. Those are just that two sets of eyes that you're going to work with in your world. So I wanted to start with this slide because Dr. Shange asked me to make some linkages between Carver and modern day soil scientists or regenerative scientists here at Tuskegee. And we often don't look at those around us as having much value. And I just asked Dr. Nkrumah and Dr. Kumlaku to just each pull about 10 publications. And I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I put in red some of the terms that link to regenerative agriculture. And if you just go through the slides real quickly and just focus in on those red words, you'll see that from the time they came to Tuskegee, they were working on sustainable agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is a component of what we do. And Raymond, maybe what should happen is you go back and get all the people who did this kind of work and put together a piece of work. Because people look at small books and whatever and put together themes. And that's one way you get your recognition for that. And you see Raymond hooked in there. That's the other thing you see on this. You see many people working together. Here's some of my own work. We're concentrated on nitrogen, and we were finding sweet potato growing without nitrogen fertilizer. So we went to Africa, went to many places around the world to see if this was a phenomenon, and if there were any special bacteria that were helping to do this, because it's such a staple crop. People use it as a security crop. Everywhere we went, there were sweet potatoes grown so that when the droughts would come, that would be the crop that would be there. The corn would dry up, but the sweet potato would be there. And so it was something that people had found a way to do. And this one crop and this one set of ideas took me around the world many, many times. And so you'll find that something that you hook onto will do that in your career. I do want to show you now, go back to your, I'm gonna blow this up if I can figure out how to do this. If not, I'll just let you look at it as it is. You see this book down here, Land and Power? Oh yeah, I'm not gonna be able to blow it up. Okay, so this came out of a conference we had at Tuskegee University. You see Owusu Bendeli on the front page. He's from Southern University, Tuskegee University graduate, did his master's, went on, got his PhD, and did organic farming all through the South. So everybody knows Owusu because back in the day, he was out there hooking up every Black person across the South who was doing organic gardening. And so he gave a presentation here. And this book, I advise you to get this book, but I want to say this. The intellectual property for this book was done by Tuskegee University and all the people we brought here. We let Jeff Jordan, who was at Georgia, get aggressive before we knew what was happening and got that under his umbrella. And you see Edward Pinnock is there with us, myself, and the one more is Robert Zabawa. But we have almost 100% Black presenters from across the country on this question of sustainable agriculture and African Americans, because Tuskegee gave the call. And you'll read those papers, they're amazing back at that time what people were doing ahead of the curve. And I just, for some reason I saw the book at the house and I picked it up and I carried it. And I just looked it up today and it's on Amazon selling for $33.16. At Tuskegee, I get 1 penny. Carver Revisited. Your session yesterday. Look, if you sit there and underestimate all that intellectual power that was shared yesterday, something's wrong. Because if the world hears this from young people saying this right now, believe me, you're gonna be on MSNBC, somebody's gonna be talking some stuff, and then something else will happen. So I have to say I'm guilty. I went to sleep myself, even though I had a big part in getting the people to come who come. And so I am sharing with you my faults. Don't you do it. Raymond, don't you dare do it. You also strung out doing so many things that you let some of this go. You gotta hire some people to follow up on that kind of stuff. So you come back to the Integrative Sustainability Center today. And when that was started, it tried to capture Carver's spirit of generative and regenerative. And we didn't even know it really. It's just that we knew we had to integrate. We knew we had to bring things together. And we had to focus on the least of these. And whatever we needed, teamwork. We need this holistic Carver, touching the earth, going out in the woods, friendly, innovative, and collective. You can't do this thing by yourself. And of course, that spirit, I'm telling you, I was there. That spirit led to the IBS and IPPD PhD program. You could not have invented those out of a different kind of heart that brought everything together and then was not selfish, but sought the rest of the campus to become a critical piece of that. And so I'm winding down, and this slide I want to take to do several things. This is my last slide. Fact. This figure right here tells you that most of the farms make less than $10,000 in sales. And you see that little line right there, all farm medium household income, that's all the income from jobs and spouses and husband or whatever, working, family working. And then this little difference right here is what comes in from the farming income. So these are your small farm. And then the US breaks it off at 350,000 and you're small. And they went up to that number because the truth of the matter is this brown figure right here is almost all the money made. $1 million or more farms. Some industrial, most family. And then you come to the 350 to 999, and those numbers are not growing. It's all moving over here. So you have 10% of the farmers, millionaires, multimillionaires, making all the money. And you got all the small farmers, 90% of them, who are virtually losing money. So I just want to ask you, when you are talking about regenerative agriculture, and you look at those pictures and you join the world on Earth Day, and you join the world on what it means to idealize around CO2 and methane under control, going into the earth and the microorganisms and healthy food and all those kinds of things. Remember this diagram right here. Because it's good to do all those things. It's good, it's healthy, it's good. But I'm telling you, in the United States, it's so much more distorted than is presented in the regenerative agriculture statement. Because even the big companies that come along and say they are now doing regenerative, and you see that, you hear those companies, they are still just ripping off all the money and ripping off other products. We've got to find a way to redistribute the wealth in agriculture. That's the other part that we don't talk about enough. And it's real hard. That's going to be a real hard battle. The other thing is, from the World Food Summit when I went in 2011, it hasn't changed. These issues for small scale farmers around the world are the same everywhere. Whether it's in Africa or Costa Rica or, Kenya, or, Guinea-Bissau, or it doesn't matter. Here in Wilcox County, trying to get a handle on the infrastructure and trying to get research or information that links to what that smallholder is doing. The generative research that Auburn does for any size farmer. That's what the land grant system. Can you do something that will help the small farmer get a piece of their profit in better order? And then if you look at what we learned here, working with the 25 farmer cooperative that we ran for about 5-6 years, we really did have a problem with getting access. So capital access is the killer You never could get it in time, so how could you talk about regenerative? You know, couldn't even get the money to buy the fertilizer if you wanted it. And then